if you wish to. Right, so we are live now. Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, greetings everybody, and greetings members of the public. If you're watching on YouTube to this transport strategy meeting of the 13th of December, my intention is that the meeting is about 45 minutes to an hour. I think we should be able to get the business done then, but I'm not intending to curtail debate in any way, shape or form that people want to. So, Fiona, have we got any apologies for absence, please?
Yes, we've had apologies for absence from Councillor Hillier, Councillor Reisman, Daryl Poulos, and I see Kester George has also sent apologies. Okay, thank you very much for that. And members of the committee, are there any declarations of interest on the items on the agenda?
No.
No. Okay, thank you. Councillor Crook, Donna wants to speak on the cycling routes number 9. So therefore there's no public participation at the moment. And if anybody wishes to speak, they'll speak to the item when it happens. Yeah, Donna, we might move that item off the agenda, so if you don't want to stay for the whole meeting, then you can.
I was in public participation, if that was all right, just so that I could just get it over and done with, or is that?
Oh, all right, okay, we'll do it then. Okay.
Well, I work for Duncan. Well, I'm self-employed, but I'm speaking on behalf of Duncan Carter from Trinity Church. I'll read this letter out if you've not already had it sent to you. It says, "To whom it may concern, I understand that the Town Council are considering a plan to introduce cycle lanes within the town of Henley-on-Thames. I am very much in favour of this idea, provided the routes can be properly designated and maintained. My concern is that for a section of what I understand is a route between Church Street, Grays Hill and Vicarage Road. My interest is twofold. I am a resident who, with others, currently maintains a section of private driveway beside the public footpath between Trinity Street, Grays Hill and the top of Norman Avenue. I am also the chair of governors of Trinity Primary School on Vicarage Road and have a concern for the safety of our pupils and their families. Currently, there is a paved public footpath that allows foot access along this route. This path is used for upwards of 1,000 foot journeys per day in term time for access to Trinity Primary School on Vicarage Road and Sacred Heart School on Grays Hill. It is also the principal route for students at the Henley College from the station to the college and is used by many other local pedestrians. According to the Highway Code, it is an offence to ride a bicycle on a public footpath, Rule 64. You must not cycle on a pavement, Laws HA 1835, Section 72 and RA Section 129. This makes sense, especially along a route frequently used by small children and in such numbers. For that reason alone, it would be dangerous to designate this section of footpath as part of a cycle route. If I may remind the council that for many years the town council maintained signs saying no cycling along the route for this very reason. The signs were on the barriers which still exist to bar cyclists on that section of the footpath at the foot of Trinity Primary School. Both signs were vandalised some time ago and were not replaced, reportedly for lack of funds. There is already an issue with some using this lane as a shortcut, both on bicycle and motorcycle, causing danger to young pedestrians. It would seem to me creating a dangerous precedent to encourage the pathway to be seen as part of a designated cycle route, even if the expectation was that people might dismount and give priority to pedestrians. That advice simply doesn't work and would be encouraging the increased use of a route unsuitable for the purpose. The modern trend is for these routes to be not only used by pedal cyclists, but also using electric bikes. and scooters which are faster and more dangerous to pedestrians in such a confined space. May I also remind the council that the gravel driveway from Church Street, Grays Hill, is a private driveway. There is no public right of access for motor vehicles or bicycles along this section. If the council were to signpost as such, it would be interested in their proposals for an annual contribution to costs of maintenance of the driveway and towards insurance costs should there be an accident along that route. Currently, no one has ever raised the issue for consideration by local residents. I am aware that this sounds somewhat negative, but I repeat that I am all in favour of establishing proper cycle routes where they can be established safely and properly maintained. The danger is that we rush into short-term solutions and do not properly assess the risk to all users and consider the costs of long-term maintenance. Best wishes, Duncan Carter, Vicar of Holy Trinity Church. Sorry, that was.
No, that's fine. Absolutely, absolutely. Yes. No, and I have seen sight of the, and Lawrence, who is working on cycle routes with me, has seen sight of the letter as well. And in fact, I think we're all, my initial reaction, and we'll save comments for number 9 when the cycling route comes up. My initial thing is that we are in agreement. The normal practice that happens at the moment, that cyclists should get dismount by Trinity School at the top of Norman Avenue, and get on their bikes on Church Street, which Dave McEwen knows very, very well. It should continue, and there should be signs saying that. And in fact, I have got a meeting on Wednesday with John Beale, who is the OCC officer dealing with this, and I will try to make sure that the signs are reinstated straight away, so that in fact people do dismount at one end and there are signs at the other end as well. So I think broadly we're in agreement with Duncan as well. It's a couple of quick comments, Jackie.
Yes.
You're on mute, Jackie.
Sorry about that.
And then David Dickey.
It's Hamilton Avenue, I think, not Norman Avenue. That's a part way along that path.
Yes, you're right. Hamilton Avenue to Church Street. That section. Yes, right. Okay. David Dickey.
I think this letter's come as a result of a conversation I was having with a lady, and Duncan came along, because on the bit of the pathway which is owned by the church, etc., which is very stony, the stones come across onto the other pathway, which I believe belongs to a council.
Oxfordshire.
Yeah, Oxfordshire. But there's a pathway that's private and a pathway that's Oxfordshire. They're next to each other, and the stones from one go across on the other. And I just said to him, I'd like to see it a bit better so that I could cycle along there. And because when the stones get on the other pavement, it becomes quite slippery. One could easily have an accident. But I found out in the conversation, I think in that letter too, that the Oxfordshire pathway there is also a footpath and not a cycle path. So the walking with your bike has got to come from the top of Hamilton Avenue right the way through to Church Road. And really? I did not know that. I thought it was in the little part by Trinity School, but it actually goes right the way through. And I reckon 90% of the cyclists don't even know that.
No, that's right.
So, but I think I caused the letter to be written, because Duncan said he'd go away and look at it and lay the facts down so that we could start from a proper place. Because I just said, what do you know so far? And he obviously now knows a lot.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. Okay. Dave McEwen?
Yeah, I think that the original signs that said no cycling were on either end of the bit where the barriers are, so where the barriers are basically, and not from Church Street, Grace Hill, all the way through to Trinity School.
Okay.
But I think so. I think what he's saying, and probably we're agreeing with, is that there should be no cycling from the Church Lich Gate outside my house, basically from there all the way through to Hamilton. Is that right? Is that what we're agreeing on? Yeah.
Well, I'll take Patrick, and then I'll have a final sentence. Patrick.
Yeah. I think what he's saying is that the local residents would welcome a contribution to maintain their driveway, and then cyclists could use it. But without that, the problem is the wear and tear to it means that, you know, the local residents having to pay for the cyclists to use it. I think he's concerned that no cyclists use the bit, as you say, Dave, between the barriers.
Yes. Well, okay, this is my final sentence. As I said, on Wednesday, I've got a meeting with John Beale, who's the OCC officer. I'm going to take him to this stretch and actually say what are the solutions. And, you know, before any solutions are implemented, then in terms of signage as to where they're going to go, I'll bring it back to this committee beforehand. Yes, I don't think we're going to wander into maintaining a private, the private bit on the right or the left, whichever way, the gravelly bit. We're not going to entertain that. If it means that, if it's safer for walkers, that cyclists dismount at Church Street and dismount at Hamilton Avenue, then that's what's going to happen. And we've got to really talk about the safety of all people in the loop in this. But anyway, I'll have excuse me, I'll have a chat with John, and then I'll come back to you on this. Okay. All right. Anyway, Donna, thank you for your contribution. Dave, I'll let you have one more word.
Oh yeah, we wasn't on that. I want to ask if we can take the car club higher up the agenda.
Right, okay. Right, and that's what I was going to say. With the permission of the committee, can I move car club up the agenda, followed by air quality? So we're going to take eight car club now, and then 7 air quality. Is that okay? Yeah, mainly because David and, well, the two Daves have got to go at about 6:45. So, Fiona, do you have anything to say on car club before I hand over to Dave? You mute.
You mute.
I think it would be best to let Dave lead on this one, if that's all right.
Okay, Dave, off you go.
Okay. The first of all, update on the figures which we got this morning from Jonathan at Co-Wheels. As of the end of November, we had 47 members, which is really good. So it's been increasing, you know, steadily, and the utilization sits in November round about the 20% mark, which again is really good. That's been increasing as well. So good news on that score. And then I just wanted to say a bit about the promotional work that's gone on. Greener Henley have sort of taken on the role of promoting the car club, because it's a really good quality initiative, encouraging people to drive low emission cars, and a climate emergency initiative as well. So we've been active in promoting things, and I just wanted to report on those activities that have happened since the car club was launched in April. So there've been, and this is all with the support and help of Co-Wheels and Henley Town Council as well. So not been on our own on it. So since the launch, we've had articles in the local papers at both the soft launch in April and the official launch in August. We've had pop-up stalls in the town square in August, September and December. We've delivered 4,000 flyers to residents within a 10-minute walk of the 2 cars that we've got. We've been networking through Henley Business Partnership, which has borne some fruit. We've done promotional work through SOHA, who've been supportive. And on 1st of December, we launched the Henley-on-Thames Car Club Facebook page. So an exciting event, as you can imagine. And if those of you who are on social media, if you can like and share or do whatever you do on with Facebook. That would be great.
Its presence on Facebook has been really good. I think that's a huge success.
Oh, great. That's good to hear. Thanks, Lawrence. Well, probably in no small thanks to you getting busy, because I know you're very active.
No.
No? Oh, okay.
I mean, I may have shared it once or twice, but
yeah, I didn't mean. I mean, generally speaking, you are very active on Facebook. Any questions from anybody?
Patrick?
Yeah, Dave. At this rate, when would we be looking for a third car?
Well, there's a somewhat difference of perspective between certainly my view on when we ought to have the third car and Co-Wheels. Co-Wheels are very cautious and would probably be happy to let it run through to the end of the 2 years. I actually think we're going to get problems with clashes and people not able to book cars before then. But so there's a conversation to be had, and Fiona and I are going to sit down at the beginning of January. I don't know if you got my email suggesting that, Fiona, but anyway, I was suggesting we sat down beginning of January and actually talked about a strategy for the third car, amongst other things. So I'd be thinking we ought to try and get a third car in next spring.
Lawrence?
Yes,
I was just going to say, if I throw it, like, I know you're not asking for them yet, but I think certainly the minute you start getting cars unavailable to be booked and requests coming in, if such data is available, definitely got to look for a third, because, you know, being a booking business myself, as soon as someone cannot get the same day something, they're going elsewhere, or they're figuring out another way to do it, and then they're a potential lost car club user. So just whilst we're trying to get it off the floor, a little bit like the bus, one of the downsides of people not using the bus is, oh, it's not frequent, or it's not this, or it's not that. So we just need as few barriers to use as possible.
I think that there's a conversation to be had there about moving forward. So it's not nobody's digging their heels in or anything. And so we just had an initial conversation this morning, and I think it's a case we'll come back to the Transport Strategy Group with and report back on how the strategy develops for the third car.
Dave, when did forgive my memory or lack of preparation, whichever you want to do, when did the car club start? What
April the 19th.
April the 19th. So I mean, it's a good point to head towards this April and thinking about maybe we should have a third car, or maybe we shouldn't. Just so the members of the committee know, Dave and I had a coffee meeting about a few things, but we did wander into it. And it's certainly one of the things I'm going to bring up with John Beals on Wednesday, because David, you were thinking of a electric car for the third one. And of course, you've got to have a charging point, an on-street charging point to do that. So we've got to do the preparatory work for that. Whether we push the button or not is for this committee to decide going forward.
Yeah, and I think there's part of that will be trying to persuade OCC to deliver on a car club specific charging point that might need to be separate from their overall strategy and so on.
Yeah, a one-off.
Yeah, a one-off
for it. Yeah, but let's do the groundwork for that.
Yeah.
But by the way, we're not anticipating that we will come back to Henley Town Council for future funding. We've had the funding for the 2 cars for 2 years. But as Dave and I explored, there are companies in the town that probably would be willing to sponsor a car or and have great use of it at the same time. So there are various options on this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are there any other questions, comments?
No.
Well, the only thing I can say, Dave, is thank you for your work you've done, and thank you for the publicity. Have you used Naomi from the Henley Town Council?
Yes, she certainly was involved when we had the press releases and the launch around then, and in fact had a good meeting with her last week.
Right.
And yeah, she's very much on board. And yeah,
she's very, very impressive, and certainly use her.
yes,
She's brilliant with social media. Right. Okay. So that's the car club done. Thank you for your work, and you continue. It took us 5 years to get here, and it looks as though it's a great success. 47 members, 20% take up. Brilliant. Yeah. Let's keep it going. Right.
Yeah. Thank you.
7, air quality. Fiona, do you want to start, and then we'll hand over to David Dickey?
Sure.
You're on mute, Fiona.
Sorry, I've got too many screens open. I was at the same time.
Well done.
So included in your papers are the extracts.
Page 13, by the way.
Thank you, Stefan. Yes, of the annual status report on air quality. So that gives you information on the nitrogen dioxide and particulate measurements made by SODC. So you will see that their reports and their graphs there, but please note that they've used the World Health Organization levels that were appropriate at the time the report was published. They have since been lowered. So all the locations in the air quality management area now exceed the new annual mean WHO guideline, which is 10 micrograms per cubic meter for nitrogen dioxide. So although at the time it was below them, they now exceed that level there. You can see the nitrogen dioxide levels were highest in Duke Street, on average exceeding the UK annual average national objective at that particular location. So this report is just for your attention to note.
David Dickey, you're mute. David, you're mute.
I'm back.
You're there.
I think that latest report covers 2020, and I think it's important to note that, isn't it, Fiona?
Yes, that's correct.
Right, which is COVID year as far as I was concerned. Pity we had the particulate reader during that time when there was less traffic about. And it is interesting that the new lower standards we'd be pressing a little bit, and it's a pity we're not sort of measuring it again now, the particulates especially. But however, we've been doing our own diffusion tube work down the other end of town. And it's very interesting to me that over the last 3-4 months, outside of crew clothing, the averages are way above the national limit of 40. In fact, they went over 50 last month. That's an average across the month for nitrogen dioxide. And Savills is now joining them above those limits. So as the traffic comes back and heavier traffic comes back, it's very interesting that the numbers seem to be rising and getting back to, I think, where we were before COVID came. The interesting thing for me in question is that outside crew clothing, which has been consistent even when there was low traffic above the limits, is that we have the buses stopping there. And a lot of people, and especially children, go backwards and forwards there, and a lot of people stand there waiting for buses. I'm not quite sure that's a safe place for it to be. I don't know there's another alternative as ever discussed of where buses could be in Henley, but I think it should be considered. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. A little bit of information before I deal with the bus or talk about the bus one that you said, David, at the end. I mean, we have to remember that we instigated a 12-month trial for the particulate monitor down the bottom of Grays Road, and we were hoping that it was clean air down there. That's the first thing to say. But of course, we knew it wasn't. But if the PM readings, the particulate readings, were bad or poor, then it would actually give us more ammunition, if you like, for the HGV ban going forward, or the restriction of weight on the weight limit. And yeah, the figures are what they are. Ricardo, who were the company of choice from SODC, did the monitoring. But it's worth actually looking at page 13 of your agenda, and I'll just take you through it for the moment. If you look at the PM10 levels, the annual mean is round about, well, the green bar is round about, well, 13. The new WHO limit is 15. So we're not too far away. And then if you turn to page 14, if you look at the annual, which is the blue blob, the annual mean is about 4. And if you look at the figures at the bottom, PM 2.5 hourly mean, the annual average is 4. Well, the new WHO is 5.
Yep.
So we are really, really close. Now, on to NOx, it's almost a slam dunk. And David, you can come back and correct what I'm summarising if you want. For the NOx readings, we've been in the UK. The limit is, or the sort of limit is 40, but the new WHO is 10. So it was great that we got the particular monitor, and don't forget it was 50% funded by SODC. The readings haven't turned out the way we would like them, but the WHO has moved in saying that the readings are pretty close to what the WHO would say is a cause for concern. One other quote I'll just say, which came to me from Susan Bartington, who is an air an air quality specialist from Birmingham University. She was a county councillor and has actually come to Cafe Scientific to speak. She tweeted, and I've had a conversation with her about this, that the Minister for Agriculture, Innovation and Climate Adaptation said at a conference, we know there is no safe limit for PM 2.5 for human health. So this is an actual government minister that's saying these tiny little particles that are so small that they can get straight into your bloodstream and cause lung problems and asthma and all that. There is no safe limit for 2.5. So the WHO are saying 5 is a good limit. The government maybe are moving towards WHO and saying that there are no safe limits. So we really have got to do something about it. So David, I've gone on a bit. So you
No, I was just going to do remember, although we're just below the new targets, it was taken during, most of those are taken during COVID times, right? So if we had a normal like now, last 2 or 3 months now, and had it, I think we would above it again. But that's my interpretation of it. But I just want to say we were at a low level and we were almost meeting the new targets. Now we've got full steam ahead. I think we'd be well above. That's what I wanted to add, Stefan.
Yep, that's
no,
fine.
You're quite right.
Thank you. So the answer is it was worth doing the study with the particulates down the bottom of Grays Road, because it gave us the data to say we're close to WHO. And as I say, as David has said, if that was during COVID times, we might well be above it. But it is very good information for Henley Town Council and Henley Town for us to go forward on it. Are there any other comments that people want to chip in? No. Okay. Well, I think the answer is watch this space. And again, I'll thank the second David, David Dickey. Thank you for your work on no idling and also on the diffusion tubes as well.
We're going to do that for another 6 months now.
Yeah. Could you just remind us how cheap or Fiona how cheap those diffusion tubes are, because they're really cost effective.
Yeah, so we get 6 months worth and all the laboratory analysis for £200 at 6 locations. So
6 locations, 12 months, 200 quid.
6 locations, 6 months
6
is
months,
£200.
200 quid. So in
Yeah.
fact, it's good value. Okay. Right, moving on then. And I know that Dave and Dave may go at 6:45. Right, Fiona, can I hand over to you number 5, the electric vehicle parking bays on Mill Meadows, which is a good news story.
It is a good news story, and I'm keen to get onto that, but I think we may, in jumping around on the menu, we may have caused you to miss approving the minutes.
Oh, I'll do that. Okay, I'll do that afterwards. Yeah. Okay.
Afterwards. Okay, great. I wouldn't want to miss that out. Thank you.
No, well, thank you for picking up that.
So the electric vehicle charging points project at Mill Meadows car park is going ahead. The contract for the 4 fast charge points has been signed, and I'm waiting to hear from the electricity company on their survey date so that we can find out when installation can begin. I also wanted to make sure that you're aware that South Oxfordshire District Council has been making progress with its contributions to charge points through what it calls the Park and Charge hubs. So it's now planning to introduce electric vehicle charging points at its Grays Road and Kings Road car parks. We don't have dates for those. We don't have the number of charge points yet, but they are saying they hope to have them installed by the end of February. So to make you aware that that is going ahead. So the paper in your pack today concerns the particular issue of the parking fees that drivers of electric vehicles would pay when they parked in Henley Town Council car parks, of course, which will only affect Mill Meadows at the moment. Now, parking fees, as you'll be aware, are not directly the responsibility of this committee. It's something that we can advise on. It's the Recreations and Amenities Committee who will make the final decision on that. But they are keen to have this group's views before they make that decision next year. So I've put together a suggestion for you in the paper. It's based on the Oxfordshire strategy. I wanted to make sure that we complied with what the strategy suggests. But to be clear, we're under that's guidance. The Oxfordshire strategy is guidance, but we're not obliged to comply with that if the town council felt that it wanted to go a different way. My advice to you would be just that for users of electric vehicles in Oxfordshire, it's easier for them if all of the car parks in the area do follow the same strategy and the same kind of approach, which is why I'm making that recommendation. So the final details will be decided in due course by the Recreation and Amenities Committee, but I'm suggesting the 3 principles here that might guide the approach. And they would be that the council use enforceable parking orders to reserve parking bays for electric vehicle charging only to prevent them being misused by other drivers. And the Oxfordshire policy also mentions car club vehicles as well, which I think is an interesting addition for us particularly to include. The second point is that the council should embed charging time limits for charging bays during peak hours in enforceable parking orders to maximise user access to chargers. So I'm suggesting that at Mill Meadows, the parking in those first 4 bays, which will be fast charge points, should be limited to 4 to 6 hours. So elsewhere in the car park, users who pay a higher fee drivers who pay a higher fee can park for longer if they wish, but I'm suggesting that in these charge points, if you limited to that amount of time, which is plenty of time to charge up to 80%, most all electric cars at the moment. But for any future rapid charging bays that the council might decide to introduce, a 1 hour limit would be more appropriate, so that users could make better use of the charging points. And then finally, in accordance with the Oxfordshire strategy, my recommendation is that the council wouldn't charge for electric vehicle charging bay usage overnight. So drivers don't normally pay for parking overnight at Mill Meadows. In any case, the current time is after 7 p.m. And so I think it would be good to emphasise the Recreation and Amenities Committee would like that to be maintained. And the reason the Oxfordshire strategy includes that is to enable drivers who don't have the facility to charge at home to be able to charge in a public space. So that's the recommendation. I'm very happy to take any questions around that.
Okay, thank you, Fiona. What I'm going to do is I'm going to propose the recommendations, and then if it's seconded, then we can take any questions in debate during it. Bear in mind that this committee is subservient to the RNA. So if we decide yay, nay, or for the RNA committee can overturn whatever we do anyway. So we're just advisory to it. But I think they're sensible recommendations that if cars are parked wrongly, then the parking orders apply. Charge limits for 4 to 6 hours if you're using it, but any future ones, it's sensible to say, right, only use it for an hour so that you get the churn on those spaces. And charging overnight, absolutely. There should be no charge overnight, but people can plug in. And it's a good thing for people who haven't got charging points at home to drive to Mill Meadows and park it overnight and then move the car. So I will propose that. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Lawrence. So that's seconded. Right. Anybody else want to talk? Questions? Whatever. Ken.
Yeah. Could you explain to me on 2.1 why we've gone for 4 to 6 hours, which is meant to be a fast, medium speed, 22 kilowatt charge points? Why have we gone for that rather than a rapid charge point, which takes an hour? You're probably going to tell me it's to do with money, but I can't see for the life of me why you want to let people park there for 4 to 6 hours, or would they ever park there for 4 to 6 hours to charge their car? I think that's more the question. And the other thing is, I don't believe for 1 minute that people will park their car down at Mill Meadows for 4 to 6 hours of an evening to charge their battery as well. I may be completely wrong, but I don't think so. So mainly, why didn't we go for the rapid charge points? Are they too expensive, are they?
Fiona?
No, it's not a price reason. The reason is the way that Mill Meadows is used. So the council has decided to install fast charge points rather than rapid ones, because that fits with the kind of usage patterns at Mill Meadows car park. So people are typically there for several hours in any case. So that gives them time to charge their car. From a user's point of view, it is cheaper to charge on a fast charge point than a rapid charge point. So if you're going to be there for a couple of hours, you'll get more electricity for your money on a fast charge point than you would on a rapid charge point. So that the reason was to fit with the timescales of parking at Mill Meadows rather than just having the quickest available charge points. But future charge points could be rapid charge points, and then users, will have a choice depending on how long they want to stay, what their particular reason is for visiting Mill Meadows car park.
So is the idea, Fiona, that if we did install rapid chargers, the idea would be we would limit, if we did, that's what I'm saying. So if we got rapids, you would have to have a limit of an hour and actually say to drivers, you pay for 4 hours parking, but what you've got to do is have an hour here and then go and move your car somewhere else, which of course is impractical because of the usage of Mill Meadows, because it's normally chock-a-blocker. It would be very, very difficult to move your car to another space if you did that. Sorry, Ken, do you want to come back on it at all? Yep.
So on the research you've carried out, what percentage of cars park in Mill Meadows for 4 to 6 hours?
I haven't got a number on that, I'm afraid, Ken. But that's what I'm advised is the typical usage of Mill Meadows, and that's the current charging structure that it has.
That should be able to show up on the meter, though. Surely there should be information on there.
David, I'll come to you in a moment.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. Okay. Well, between now and the RNA committee, that might be worth one thing to find out, Fiona.
Yes. I'll gladly find out. But the council has signed a contract for 4 fast charge points. So that's we've been through that process. That's kind of a done deal. Future charge points could be rapid, but the first 4 will be fast.
So if the contract's signed, it might be worth just finding out the information anyway, so that it for future things. David.
Yes.
Apologies, I need to go.
Oh,
yeah.
No, Dave Dickey. I'm sorry. Thanks, Dave McEwen. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think the question better who stays there for 6 hours, who has driven for 6 hours that they need to stay there for 6 hours to charge enough to go back home. I think that people will arrive having maybe driven an hour or two, will stay an hour or two and will get perfectly adequate charge to get home. So I think these charges, I'm a great advocate of the faster charges, but if they've got the full, it is not, you don't want people staying all that time, and they don't need to from charging point of view. They'll get back home and with the charge they will get in the 1 or 2 hours that they're there if they're really visiting. So I think that is a problem that won't actually arise.
Are there any other questions, comments? Jackie?
Yeah, it's only a comment that the Climate Emergency Working Group, when it did its work on charging points, that work was held up waiting for the County Council strategy to come out. So I think it's a positive to try and fit in with that strategy. It would be a shame to have not pushed ahead with what Henley wanted to do and then not fit in with a county-wide strategy. So that was a comment I wanted to make.
No, that's fine, Jackie, that's fine. Lawrence?
I think the fast chargers, the ones chosen, are practical, as Dave said. And Ken, I think people will, because we've been looking at accessibility to charging for those that do not have off-street parking. And around that area, there's actually a surprising number of flats, as I'm sure we're all aware, many of whom won't have easy access to put their own kind of off-street charging on. Many of those flats are actually quite expensive. So because there's no cost to park overnight, it's sort of a no-brainer for them to go down, pay for their 4 hours of charging, get free parking overnight. And no, they're not going to go back and get it. They're just going to go back and get it the next morning. But there's no problem with that. That's no different to the people, all the residents that leave their cars in Grays Road or Kings Road car park overnight and use it as kind of ancillary parking. So I think that will still work well. And that should work in favour with the newly announced SODC charges in both the Grays Road and Kings Road as well. I think that's the whole purpose of the district doing exactly that.
And of course, Fiona, correct me if I'm wrong, on B, the fast charging base should be limited to 46 hours. That's a Henley Town Council decision. So therefore, if after a year we actually find that they are car blocking the spaces and the chargers, then that could be reviewed to bring it down to say, well, only use these bays for 2 hours, maybe.
Yes, that's exactly right. It's in the time period is entirely within the gift of the town council.
Well, let's pop it to the final.
Sorry, and normal car parking fees will apply on top of the charging rate.
Yes, that's right. It's the normal. It's the standard car parking charge, and the customer pays for the electricity used on the charging. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, it's. I think it's great the Henley Town Council have gone ahead and actually got this done. And you're right. We have been enormous. Jackie, you're quite right. We've been enormously frustrated how long it's taken OCC to get to get their act together. To be fair to OCC, they have been trialing it in Witney and also Bicester before they rolled it out to the whole county. But they're beginning to get it together, SODC with Grays Road and Kings Road car park. So anyway, let's pop into the vote. So my proposal, which is seconded by Lawrence, that we recommend page 12, A, B, and C, and we're going to vote on all of those together. So all those in favour of A, B, and C. Okay, well, we've got it passed, and of course, it can be reviewed in a year's time. We'll leave that to RNA to actually do that. Now, the minutes. Right, item 4, page 5 to 7. I propose we accept the minutes. Do I have a seconder, Lawrence? Are there any comments on the minutes at all? Okay, so just for technicality, yeah. Okay, all those in favour of accepting the minutes? Okay, thank you very much. Job done. Right. So we've got 2 items left on the agenda. Well, apart from the date for the next meeting, HGV, environmental weight restriction, and the cycle routes. I'm going to, if I can, completely juggle the agenda. Can I deal with the 9 cycling routes? Because that's going to be a small item, whereas HGV, there may well be questions going forward. Right, number 9, cycling routes. To receive a verbal update on the cycling routes. Lawrence and I, well, it was in the height of the summer. I don't think Lawrence has recovered yet. In the height of the summer, we mapped out the cycle routes that we were going to do, and we're still crawling towards them. And the one that we were talking about earlier is the one that goes from the Tesco roundabout along Vicarage Road, through that bit by Trinity School, which people have to get off their bikes, along Church Street, hop across the road towards the college, etc., etc., etc. I'm having the meeting on Wednesday with John Beale to actually try and really get that implemented. And he will advise on the signage, and he will advise on that pinch point, my words, and how to go forward. He will have to do a survey of the whole route and come up with a cost for the paint that's going to go on the ground. The other thing that I have worked on, just to lob in, is I've been working with Councillor Bartholomew, and and to a certain extent, it was prompted by Lawrence, that on a cycle route from Shiplake to Henley, a safe cycle ride, that we should get developer contributions from the sites that may or may not appear there, and I won't comment on the Thames Farm site, because that's of course stuck at the moment. But if houses are built in the area, then we should have a safe cycle ride from Shiplake to Henley. So that's been put on the agenda of the Section 106 committee at Oxfordshire County Council. I've raised the awareness that we want money for that, for a safe route from there. So coming back to the cycle route that we were thinking of, the Tesco to the Fair Mile route. Any comments at all? I will of course bring it back after I've had a chat with John. Lawrence?
I know there'll be many different views, but I think they do work well. Like Henley is quite difficult to navigate not using the main arterial routes. These are a good attempt at making Henley safer and easier to navigate. Yeah, they do have the odd pinch point and the odd walkway, but I think as long as they're well signposted, we've made a good effort to be more welcoming to cyclists and to encourage cycling slightly more. Patrick and I met a lovely lady whose name has completely escaped from my head right now at the 3 Tons, and had a good chat about cycling. And as she said, she was like, "Oh, I'll just use the main Reading Road," and it's kind of like, fine. Those that are happy still using the main Reading Road, great. But if you're a mother with a young family, or less comfortable and confident on your bike, I think they're good routes, and that type of individual will be more than happy to comply and dismount their bike, I'm sure, for the walking sections, of which there are only a couple. There's one section by Luca down onto the end bit, and then the other section that we spoke about earlier. So I think they're sort of unavoidable, and hopefully we can work around them.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Jackie, sorry, and then Patrick.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask where is the best place to see a visual of where the routes are proposed? It's not in this pack.
No, it's not. It's mainly because we created the visual about a year and a half ago, and we've been scrabbling towards it. What I'll do, I'll ask Fiona to send it round to the committee, because there are three routes that are proposed. Anyway, I'll send it round, and then we can have another debate if I get this one moved forward.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
No, will do. Patrick, you're on mute.
Yeah, I wonder on the Trinity one, as obviously that's going to be contentious, whether there's a way of identifying the footpath in some way. For instance, the obvious one would be that bright red paint that the county use on certain parts of the highway, so that it makes it blatantly obvious that that is a bit that's very different from where cyclists have just ridden. I do feel that Duncan has a point that if we designate a route with that pinch point in the middle, that walk, I think we're beholden. We ought to put the effort in to try and make it blatantly obvious to cyclists that they should be walking at that point.
I will agree with you, Patrick. Jackie?
Yeah, I agree. I'd just like to suggest that rather than it being, and I don't know what the options are to do this, but rather than it being a negative way of signing it, that you can't do it, that it should be a positive sign, that it's for walkers and pushchairs and things like that.
That's a good thought. Right. I will relay these to John, and we'll have a good chat at either end of that pinch point. And it'll come back to this committee in the future. Patrick? Yeah.
Have we made any progress with the perpetual, the Invesco permitted path at the back?
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, that one would be a great one, particularly for commuters cycling into the station, because it would take all of the people from Waterman's, from Vicarage Road, and up my way, and from Highlands for that matter, take them straight down to the railway side, side of the railway track, and straight into the station. And I wonder whether if Invesco could be persuaded, we could probably get GWR money to actually put that in place.
The answer is yes. That is the other route. I was pausing on it at the moment, but the committee, you can correct me if you. I'm pausing on at the moment because at the end by the care home.
Oh yeah.
We have got the public footpath dispute, which of course ideally the cycle route stroke walking route would come from Mill Lane through that disputed bit along the industrial estate and then around the back of Invesco Perpetual. But there's no reason why we can't move it forward. You do Waterman's, you come down the road on the Newtown industrial estate and then round the back of Perpetual. So I mean, I could start making moves approaching Invesco to do with that, Patrick.
Yeah, at the moment there's a dual use from Tesco's to Mill Lane, I believe, and I wonder whether it's feasible to put pressure on OCC as to whether they could actually acquire land if necessary, but to dual use the pavement from Mill Lane to the Newtown Road, the estate. And then that would actually give you a clear run from Tesco's, from the zebra crossing and from Tesco's all the way then down to the station.
Yeah, so that we could actually get on with it and forget the footpath for the moment.
Yeah,
but actually get it implemented. Yep, good point. I will raise that. It looks as though it's going to be a 4-hour meeting with John on Wednesday. By the way, I'm also talking about speed counts on St Andrews, St Mark's, Vicarage Road, Harpston Road, Gravel Hill, and also Northfield End and Kings Road. So there could be a lot of speed counting going all the way around there. So that's what my meeting on Wednesday is about, as well as these matters. So okay, let's move forward. I will obviously report back to you on those any developments on the cycle routes.
Thank you.
Okay, HGV number 6, HGV environmental weight restriction. To consider the recommendations from OCC on the proposed weight limit. This is verbal. I was hoping to have a substantial paper from OCC on alternative routes for HGVs and also locations of ANPR cameras. Sorry, you'll have to forgive me. I'm going to talk for about 3 or 4 minutes on this particular thing. And the reason why we haven't got any paperwork is because I thought we were going to get this paper from Oxfordshire so that we would have had a substantive discussion. Just to say that it's my intention that this paperwork will be coming in early January. So I am proposing, and Fiona knows this, that on the 24th of January, we have a one-item agenda dealing with HGVs, because we'll have a lot to talk about going forward. So that is Monday, the 24th of January at 6 p.m. Yeah, the same time as now. Right. Sorry, I apologise. 3 or 4 minutes of me. We've had a an initial meeting with OCC and an initial paper from OCC, and it's mapping out the way forward. The way forward is that OCC are going to establish where the HGVs are going to go if they don't come through Henley, and map those routes. Then they will be proposing ANPR, automatic number plate recognition cameras, at various locations on those routes to actually collect the data of HGVs. And it's really a sort of like a what if scenario. If a lorry does not come through, well, firstly, where are the lorries going when they come through Henley? They're coming down Whitehill and they end up at Didcot. And of course, it's our intention that we actually stop the through HGVs. There are two other complications we have to take into account. Marlow, part of Marlow, has an air quality management area. Henley is an AQMA, an air quality management area. Part of Marlow is an AQMA, and part of Caversham is an AQMA. And from the discussions we've had with OCC, it would be remiss of us to try and divert HGVs into other AQMA areas. So that's why they are going to be mapping the alternative routes to, inverted commas, avoid these AQMAs, because we've got to take into account it's not just a case of slapping a ban on Henley. We've got to take into account the wider area. OCC will then propose where the ANPR locations are. I, as county councillor, and obviously Kath and Fiona, we will have a meeting and we will basically argue, because the more locations means more cost to Henley Town Council, and we obviously don't want locations the other side of Slough or locations the other side of High Wycombe. They've actually got to be sensible locations. So we've got to argue or discuss with OCC to actually say, well, okay, these are sensible. An ANPR at the Crowmarsh Gifford roundabout, that's sensible. An ANPR at the Hurley roundabout at Maidenhead, that's sensible. But if we start spreading them wider, A, the cost goes up, and B, it becomes more and more ridiculous as to how you assess the data. The other bit that OCC are asking us to discuss are two further things. It is much easier if we go for a single point of weight limit. For example, the bridge. If we put a weight limit on the bridge, it is obviously easier to monitor. If we're talking about putting a weight limit on the whole town, then you have to have technology and cameras covering the Reading Road, Gravel Hill, the Fair Mile and Whitehill, for example. Therefore, it's a lot easier if we put it on the bridge. If we put it on the bridge, that would mean that traffic coming down Whitehill and going onwards would actually be restricted. So it would actually help the surrounding villages as well. So I'm fairly comfortable about that. So the one point is we should actually go for the bridge as being the point of the weight limit. The other thing that OCC are asking us to consider, and it's only to consider at the moment, that we don't have a 7.5 ton weight limit. We have an 18 ton weight limit. And the reason why 18 ton is that 18 ton vehicles have to have 3 axles. So therefore it's easier to actually monitor the vehicles coming into Henley. and there aren't as many of them. So these big, huge juggernauts with 3 axles are the target vehicle. A removal van, which is 2 axles, which is lower than 18 ton, it would be allowed through Henley. But that's another thing that OCC are asking us to consider. Just to say also that, and I'm almost at the end now, you'll be pleased to know. And when we get the paper from Oxfordshire, this will be all put on paperwork so that you have it before the meeting. Kath and I went up to Burford for a meeting, and we had a meeting with Councillor John White and County Councillor Nick Field Johnson. Nick is is the county councillor for Burford, and I've been talking with him quite frequently, and he's also encouraged me to do with it. So Kath and I had the meeting. They are they have what is called a TRO, a temporary traffic regulation order. They were given a TRO of 7.5 tons for a year, temporarily. So what we would be pushing for in Henley is a TRO, a temporary traffic regulation order. In other words, that is what we would, I think, have to agree with on Oxfordshire to actually have the weight limit for a 12-month period so that they can collect more data, so that we can see the problems with it, and we can also fix the problems before it becomes a permanent one. The cost is about £150,000 from Burford, and that translates roughly to where it would be in Henley. So we're talking about a bill for 150 grand for this. They actually raised half of the money from the council, and half of the money was by public subscription. And I would say that if we are progressing this, that's the kind of model we would go for. The whole 150 grand would not fall on the shoulders of Henley Town Council. We'd have to come up with a formula of trying to get extra money from elsewhere. Anyway, it was a very good meeting. Oh, sorry, the enforcement and whatever, it's worth talking about that. Burford employs somebody for 2 days a week, and they look at a sample day's data. They don't look at all of the lorries coming through. They say, right, we're going to look at Tuesday, and they look at all of the lorries that are breaking the rules. They write them down, or the person writes them down. The person doing it is paid £15 an hour to do the data analysis. They write down the vehicles, and then there is a small committee of the Burford Town Council that look at whether they are going to progress these towards prosecution. So it was a very useful meeting to actually find out the nuts and bolts of it. So I'll stop talking there, but the main issues are that OCC are saying they're mapping the routes for where the HGVs are going to go. Secondly, where are the ANPR cameras going to go? Thirdly, instead of going for a town centre point, it's the bridge. We put the weight limit on, and maybe we agree to clobber the big lorries, in other words, the 18 tonners, rather than catching all of them from 7.5 ton upwards. Right, let me stop, and I'll take obviously any questions. And Kath can help me out because she was on the Burford meeting as well. All right, Jackie.
Yes, I'm wondering how Burford collected their baseline data to work from, as in how many, what is the current situation, and what is the idea on how Henley would do that?
Kath, if you want to unmute and you want to chip in at any time on this, because you were with it, OCC would say that actually Burford did not do enough baseline data capturing, because the only data they collected was for the high street of Burford. And if you know the geography of Burford, it's one road going down, and I think they did ANPR cameras at the top and the bottom, and that was it. Whereas OCC would insist that we collect data from a wider area. Kath, at any time, chip in as well. Kath, sorry.
Yeah, I don't think I've got anything to add. I just remember them they hadn't done sufficient data gathering to start with, and they subsequently put the net out much wider. But I suppose that's what we're waiting for OCC to come back with on the locations of the ANPR cameras now.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, there's one more thing on Burford, which is really, really relevant, is that the lorries going through the surrounding villages, there's been a 50% reduction in the lorries, and the air quality, there's also been a 50% improvement in air quality or reduction, whichever way you want. So there have been dramatic wins for the particular scheme. Patrick?
Yeah, I would say hesitate to take too many parallels with Burford. They've got a very, very simple traffic layout. Basically, what they've got is a main road that runs at the top of the village. The high street runs down to the bridge and then splits into two, one going off towards Chipping Norton, the other one going off towards Stow-on-the-Wold. So it's a very, very simple structure, whereas we've got quite a bit more complex structure in that you can have traffic coming down the Marlow Road and going off towards Reading. You can have traffic, some traffic goes across the bridge, goes to Reading, some goes across to Marlow, some goes on up to Oxford and so on. And so it's a much more complex situation. But I think I feel I would want to be persuaded that we go from 7.5 to 18 tons. I'd be concerned about that. And I hope that when you get your paper, that there will be much more substantial information as to why we should go that way. In that it's amazing how much 7.5 to 18 ton traffic there is, and we wouldn't catch much of that. If you think about four-wheeler, effectively, four-wheeler trucks, then there are quite a few delivery trucks, there's parcel trucks, there's everything else that would fall into that category. And I would be concerned that we wouldn't be catching them. Otherwise, I think it's great. And I look forward to the meeting, when you do get the paper. I think it's really important that we crack on with this.
Yep, I agree. Ken?
Yeah, just a question. What's the weight limit on the bridge at the bottom of the road in Burford?
In terms of what the bridge would hold, anything. Yeah. It's strong enough to take anything, but they have on the high street and the bridge, they've put a 7.5 ton limit on it. The TRO is for 7.5 tons. That's what the Burford one is. I don't know what the bridge would. The bridge, I think, will stand whatever it will. Whatever you can chuck at it. You could have 31 tonners going over that bridge and it wouldn't move. But the temporary traffic regulation order is for 7.5 tons.
So why are we going for 18?
We're not necessarily, Ken.
We're not necessarily, Ken. But the answer is that OCC are suggesting that it's easier to enforce and easier to implement. Yeah, I think you will have to wait for the OCC's rationale for it to come through. Yeah. We've got a few more, well, sorry, I won't imply a lot more. We've got a few more meetings before we actually get the scheme that we can agree with OCC on. So there's still a lot more work to do, or a bit more work to do. Patrick?
Have they intimated how much more we'd have to pay to convert the TTRO into a TRO?
No. The answer is yes. The answer is, perversely, it's the same price. If you have a TTRO, the main cost is signage and the ANPR technology. So if, say, for example, Henley gets a temporary traffic regulation order, we would have to pay 150 grand, let's say, for the lump. And if after the 12 months they say, well, it hasn't worked and we're scrapping it, all of that 150 grand is down the toilet.
Right.
So the answer is to implement the TTRO will cost 150 grand, and then to convert it into the traffic regulation order proper, in other words, the permanent thing, is nothing at all.
Ah, right. Okay.
So, but the way I think we will have to do it is we won't immediately be able to do a TRO. That's what I'm saying. And Burford couldn't immediately do a TRO. It was implemented temporarily to see how it would work. And I'm hopeful that for Burford, the TRO, the temporary one, becomes a permanent one. But there is a meeting in January to debate, discuss, decide whether it's going to become a permanent one. That's happening in January. And I will be going to attend that meeting, and I will be supporting Burford to make it permanent, of course. Yeah. Patrick?
Yeah, I believe that in the transport studies that we've had, that we have some information in those on the traffic routes as a baseline. So we probably already have a baseline for, I can't remember now, it's a long time since I read through that, but I think it would pay us to go and revisit that original report that we had 5-6 years ago, to see how much information it's got as to where the traffic goes and whether it actually discriminates between just HGVs or whether it has any information on tonnage in it.
Yeah. Okay. I think Fiona has pointed OCC towards those studies so that they have that background information as well.
Good.
But what we need is this substantial route map and ANPR locations. That's the next game changer, if you like, going forward. Jackie?
I'm curious, really, if it's a TTRO, is there an option to look at just doing the signage as a temporary thing and not the ANPR, so that you can see if that makes a difference in itself, just the signage, and then add on if you need to at a later date? And if that would reduce the costs a lot.
Well, I'm not going to answer that question, Jackie.
No, it's
what
a curiosity
we will have,
question.
and that will be subject to the next meeting in a way, if you like, that once they've created the map and the ANPR locations, once we agree the map and the ANPR locations, and that will be for all of us on this call at the moment to do, then it would have to go out to competitive tender to actually get a cost. Now, we would then have a cost for the signage and also all the ANPR bits that go with it, plus the salary of this person that Burford had 2 days a week. So I will just pause on that for the moment, because it may well be the signage. I mean, I'll speculate. The signage is going to cost 130 grand, and the ANPRs are only 20 grand. So it's only a small amount of money. So let's wait until we get the map and then the costs to follow.
Thank
Patrick?
Yeah, my understanding is that the ANPR is actually what OTC are going to use to do the survey. That I think they wouldn't be able to collect the data on the vehicles that are actually using the roads without the ANPR. So it's a fundamental part of it, I think, Jackie.
Oh, no. I think we've got to have the ANPR for the study, but I think Jackie was saying...
Oh, ongoing. Yeah. Okay.
When it's implemented, could we just have the signage and not have the ANPR cameras? But of course, it would probably rapidly come into contempt, because lorry drivers would say, oh, well, we've got a lot of signage, but how are they going to enforce it? Well, the answer is we can't if we haven't got the ANPR cameras. Burford have 2, that's all. So I think we can probably, it would probably be 2 or 3 for the implementation phase, not for the data gathering phase. Right. Anyway, the next meeting will have a substantial paperwork to go with it, so that this was just sort of like a verbal refresher on where we're at the moment. So yeah. So I think we'll leave it at that for the moment, and then we'll have the substantive debate discussion, at the next meeting with paperwork attached. Right. Number 10, date of next meeting. I alluded to that. Could you pop Monday the 24th at 6 p.m. in your diaries? And hopefully, early January, you will have all the paperwork for that meeting. It'll be a one-item agenda, that meeting, and you will have all the paperwork from Oxfordshire for that meeting. Okay. Right, we're at the end, unless anyone's got any other comments. No? Okay. Well, thank you, Fiona, and thank you, Kath, for the journey up to Burford to get the information, and we'll keep talking to Burford and